Hello everyone, Matt from Model Minutes here and welcome back to the workbench for another unboxing. Today I'm taking a look at this, the Sherman Calliope from the Airfix Vintage Classics range. Join me as I get stuck inside the box and see what this kit is like. So on the outside then we can see the tank here firing its rockets from off the roof. On the bottom right, we have an item code of A02334V, V for vintage, and it tells us that it's of that slightly odd scale of 176. It's part of the Vintage Classics range, so I immediately know that this is going to be an older tooling. The rear of the box doesn't feature anything other than a production number, so we will continue with the edges here. On this long thin edge we have some safety warning information, but we do have tooling information. It's really good that Airfix puts this on the sides of their boxes, and here it tells us that this originally is from 1961. So I have actually already built the sort of 1961 Sherman, but this did have extra parts added in 2009 to give it the rocket launchers on the top. This particular version I have here was released in 2019. There is a Cartograph logo which tells us that decals included are made by Cartograph and should be to a nice quality. If we flip over to this other edge, it does give us some information about it. Again, tells us more information about the moulding. It tells us who created the illustration, which was John D. Jones in 2006, and gives us some information about the rocket launcher Calliope tank. It also tells us the paint scheme that's included, which is a 1944 US Army version, and we have some dimensions. It's a 75mm in length, 33 in width, and there are 74 parts included. Some Humbrol paint colour callouts are suggested here. A skill level of 2, so Airfix thinks it's going to be moderately okay to build. And then we have 1 flying hour. That's a coupon, cut it out, keep it. If you're in the Airfix club, you can redeem it against more kits. If not though, do send them on to Models for Heroes, who can redeem them for their charitable work. The edge of the box features the same artwork and information as on the front. And without any further ado, let's get inside the box of this one. As usual, I'm going to start with the paperwork. So let's have a look. There should be some decals here. There they are. Let's put them to one side. The normal format from Airfix, we've got information about the tank on the front and then some tips on the bottom. Make sure to wash our sprues because there could be mold release on them. And then we're straight into the assembly instructions. Normally there are some health and safety ones. Oh, they're on the back. Health and safety, and the key to the symbols are on the back of the sheet. So this is a long piece of paper which keeps opening up. So what I'm going to do is fold it, just bear with me a second, like that, so I can get it on the workbench a little bit better. So we have, first up, and this is very similar to the Sherman tank I built previously, because surprise, surprise, it's going to be the same tooling. So we have to assemble our running gear, our wheels go on, and then this all gets added onto the sides of our hull. Technically, this had play value, and if you were careful, the wheels should freely rotate, and these sprockets could rotate as well. I think that was a bit optimistic. I really wonder how many people managed to get them to work. You do get rubber band tracks included, so the idea was that you could like roll them along on the floor, but I'd be surprised how many people managed to successfully achieve that. Once you've added all of your running gear to the side of the sides of the hull are built up like a box with other components, and then the top of the hull is added as well. Then we come onto our actual turret, and we have to add our main gun, a machine gun, and sort of, what do they call it? The cupola at the top. And also, it is worth noting that you need to drill some 1mm diameter holes in the positions marked. Now, it isn't entirely clear where those positions are. I presume it's one on each side, either side of the turret. I don't think there's any marks for it because this is a later modification that Airfix made. If we look on here, the reason why you're going to do that is because you're going to add your rocket launcher things. So I would probably be tempted to assemble that and then mark where it sort of aligns with the turret and then drill the holes. Moving on, we add our turret to our tank. You don't have to glue it in, that's what that means, so it could freely rotate. We can have our extra sort of blanking plates for our hatches included. We have a machine gun, and our rubber band tracks are joined. It is more rubbery vinyl stuff, so if you are going to join them. There are different ways. You could use super glue, you could use staples. In this case, they're suggesting that you heat something up and melt them together. On to the final stages then. This is the extra bit. We have our rockets, which get glued together. So these are all our rocket tubes, and they get attached to these kind of like mounting arms. This comes in a number of different parts, and it all gets glued together and then attached onto the tank. I think that in real life, the way that these would have been aimed is by like aiming the tank gun up, and that would push up the like rocket rails as well. So at this point now, we've got all of these rockets attached to the top of our tank. So that's the upgrade that they made. And then if we turn over to the final page, we have color painting instructions, which tells us that generally we're going for a khaki overall. Our tracks are painted in rust. Our running gear is in a black. And there are some little elements which are in gunmetal. I think there's the sort of the tubes of the rockets and probably the machine guns. So a very simple paint scheme on this one. It's nice to see a little bit of a modification to a sort of vintage kit. And I think we should move on to the decals. And that's it. We have 4 stars and 1 star in a circle. That's all of our decals. That's everything that we get in this particular boxing. And they're made by Cartograph, so they should be absolutely fine. Yeah, great. There's not even any registration numbers. Normally you get like a registration number for a specific tank, but I guess not in this case. You just get generic. And then that brings us on to the plastic parts. Again, I've not had this open, so this will be a treat, won't it? I imagine it will be very similar to the other Sherman that I built previously, because it should be exactly the same. And it is worth mentioning that this is the old tank and is 1/76 scale. The reason why was because back in the day, a lot of manufacturers, if they had a model railway range, they wanted to link it in with their model railway range. And UK 00 gauge trains are 1/76. So you would have trains and you would have your tanks and your figures, and you'd have that all playing together. Nowadays, we all sort of move towards 1/72, so it aligns better with aircraft. We have then, these are the vintage parts. Everything I've got here, the rubber band tracks and these elements here are all the vintage components. This, as you can probably tell, is on a newer looking sprue, and these are the additions. So naturally, this sprue looks to be much better quality than the vintage parts. So this is our extra add-ons. It has our various rocket rails and rocket tubes and the extra components for mounting it onto the top of the tank. The moulding is pretty crisp actually. There's not much in the way of flash. There is a tiny little bit in a few places, but on the whole, that's actually moulded quite nicely. Plastic isn't overly greasy either, and it is in this sort of khaki green, so you could, if you didn't want to, just leave it in the bare plastic. Bit of play value for you. The rest of the tank though, this is very similar to the vintage kit I've previously built, so I'm probably not going to dwell too long on it. On the whole, it's an old kit. It's a little bit flashy. The details are quite chunky. I remember the kit being generally acceptable to build. It was okay. I didn't hate it, but you do have to take a little bit of time, especially when you've got to clean up bits of flash. And I remember the wheels and the running gear being like the most annoying part, because there was just a lot you had to do with them. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's an old sort of clunky vintage kit which has been upgraded ever so slightly by adding in an extra sprue for some rocket rails. People don't really like rubber band tracks these days. I get why they did it. It was like for play value, and I think given that this is a vintage kit, there's not much we can do about that. This one will need a little bit of cleaning up just to make it a little bit more presentable. But yeah, I think it is what it is, isn't it? So let's remind ourselves what we had. We had a number of vintage components from the original Sherman tooling, and then we had an extra sprue for our rocket rails to represent a Calliope. We had our instructions, which are relatively easy to follow, and the painting instructions are all in colour. One tiny sheet of decals for a generic tank version, all of which came contained within this box, which is quite nicely illustrated with the rockets being launched and the machine gun firing. We already know the tooling dates and stuff on this. It was originally a 1961 tooling for the main tank components, and then a 2009 edition for the rockets. This particular version dates from 2019, and we have not seen it since 2019. I think I actually got this like as part of a bundle I bought from the Airfix website, and it must have been stock clearance because this was one of the things that was included in it. Originally on the Airfix website, I am pretty sure that it was retailing for £10.99 as its individual boxing. Maybe that's a little bit expensive for a vintage kit, but it does bring it kind of in line with the rest of the vintage classics range at that time, especially given the fact that there are so many parts included and we had this newer element as well. Maybe I would have preferred to have seen a different paint scheme option as well, so 2 paint schemes would have made it better value. But I'm sure that people did enjoy this one when they had their chance to get their hands on it. Of course, 2019 was the last time we saw this. It's out of stock. It's been discontinued. It's possible that they could consider bringing this back as part of the Vintage Classics range again at some point in the future. But seeing as this Sherman tooling has effectively been retired and was replaced by a 1/72nd scale new version of a Sherman back in 2020, I think it was, I wonder how much incentive there is for Airfix to sell something nowadays which is still a bit old and a bit clunky. Maybe they could add these parts into the new version. I don't know. Maybe that would be an option. But yeah, I think to sum up, this is a old kit. It's a fairly classic design with a few upgrades, maybe a little bit expensive for what it was, but probably a bit difficult to find in the shops these days. But do let me know what you thought of my review in the comments below the video and whether my assessment of it was fair. Don't forget that we have a Model Minutes Model Club, and if you'd love to join the club and get exclusive access to early videos and other perks, check out the links in the description. Massive thanks to these Model Club members on screen for the extra support they give me, allowing me to create consistent content. Of course, there are other ways to help support the channel as well if you'd like to do so, and again, full information is below the video. The best way to support the channel for free though is by subscribing with notifications turned on so you never miss a modelling upload. Finally though, last thing to say is a massive thank you to you for watching this one, and I'll catch you on the workbench again next time.